Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Thanks to Lotus Paintball for this one. Amy discards Forsaken Miner to cast Bone Shards, targeting Nick's Grizzly Bears. Can she pay black to return Forsaken Miner to play? Okay, so first up, let's recall a little bit about how triggered abilities work. Anytime anything happens in the game checks to see if what just happened matches the trigger conditions of any abilities that exist. Now, most abilities only function on the battlefield, but of course that wouldn't make sense for abilities like Forsaken Miners, so this ability triggers from the graveyard. Therefore, we need to answer the question of whether Forsaken Miner was in the graveyard at the time its trigger event happened, i.e. the time when Amy committed a crime. Committing a crime officially happens when Amy finishes casting Bone Shards, not when the Grizzly Bears becomes targeted. For my advanced CR scholars, I'll admit this isn't super clear based on the rules as written, but this ruling is consistent with what Magic's postgame have said on the topic, for example, in the Gatherer rulings on Forsaken Miner, which indicate that when you commit a crime, abilities trigger at the same time as abilities that trigger when you cast a spell. So putting this together with the previous information gives us the answer to our original question. Bone Shards is not officially cast until after all of the costs have been paid. Therefore, Forsaken Miner will be in Amy's graveyard at the time when Amy is considered to have committed a crime, and the game is checking to see if this has caused any triggered abilities to trigger. Let's close out with a couple of challenge questions to test your understanding. What if, instead of discarding Forsaken Miner to cast Bone Shards, Amy sacrifices a Forsaken Miner that's already on the battlefield? And this case will play out exactly like the previous one. First, the costs are paid, which will result in Forsaken Miner being put into Amy's graveyard. Then, the game sees that a crime has been committed, and checks for any triggered abilities. Since Forsaken Miner is in Amy's graveyard at this time, Amy can pay to return it. Finally, let's say Amy sacrifices a Raven of Fell Omens to cast that Bone Shards. Would its crime ability trigger? And the answer here is no. Remember that, normally, abilities of permanence only function while the permanent that has them is on the battlefield. Forsaken Miner's ability is an exception, since it references returning it to play from the graveyard, but Raven of Fell Omens does not fall under that rule. Therefore, when the game is checking if any triggered abilities exist that trigger off of Amy committing a crime, the Raven's ability will not trigger because the Raven isn't on the battlefield at that time. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.